Hey everyone! Today I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about some typical spring activities and typical spring food in Minnesota. So, the first and probably the most famous spring activity is baseball. So, the spring is when the professional league starts, and it goes throughout the summer and autumn. But it starts in the spring. It's the most typical sport to play and to watch in the spring. As you can see in this picture, there's lots of people in the stadium, and it's very typical for people to play baseball with their friends and their family because it's very simple to play. We also like to go hiking in the spring. This is when you go walking through a forest or maybe up hills, mountains, and things like that. We like to go hiking because we like spending time outside. And in the spring, it gets warm enough to go outside. So, people will go for hikes through the woods, and up here, some mountains by a lake, it looks like. Most hiking trails are near a lake or a river and a place where there's a lot of hills and small mountains like this. People also like to fly kites in the spring. The spring is typically very windy in Minnesota, so when there isn't any rain, people will go outside and go flying a kite. It's a very simple and fun thing to do with your family. And finally, we have gardening. So, a lot of people in Minnesota like to garden or plant things. In this picture, this person is planting some flowers, which is somewhat typical. Here's a picture of someone's front yard. They've done a lot of gardening here. You can see they have some flowers, it's all the color, and a lot of different types of bushes as well. Looks like some wheat to look pretty. Well, people will also garden or plant food. In this picture, we've got a lot of different vegetables growing. Like here, we've got some potatoes. Up here, we've got some rhubarb, which we'll see later. And I think over here, I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it's probably some type of vegetable. So most people plant things like potatoes, tomatoes, fruits like strawberries, and things like that in the spring. So, speaking of food, some typical spring foods are, first of all, berries. It's very typical to have berry bushes in your garden. So, a lot of people have typically blackberry bushes, and towards the end of spring, these berries are ready to be eaten. You can also have bushes for things like the blueberries, raspberries. Strawberries typically aren't eaten in the spring, but you plant them in the spring. And then these red berries, which are also eaten in the spring. So, for example, my grandmother actually had a lot of blackberry bushes at her house. So, in the spring, we would all go up and help my grandma pick all the blackberries. Another typical food would be fish. Now, there isn't that much fish in Minnesota. Most fish you can't eat. A lot of it is protected or it just isn't very good for eating. But we do have some salmon that is farmed in the north of Minnesota. And the most typical way to eat salmon in Minnesota is with rosemary and lemon. And it's very, very tasty. We also have pasta salad. Now, pasta salad is just a salad with pasta and fruits and vegetables. It's very simple. Here we've got, you can see some pasta, some cucumber, some tomatoes. I think that's an olive. I believe this is a small slice of ham, actually, and a little bit of cheese. So any mix of pasta with a bit of fruit, maybe a bit of cheese, is called a pasta salad, and it's a very light and tasty way to make a different kind of salad. We also have dill chicken and potatoes. So dill This is a question for you guys. You need to look up dill in the dictionary. So dill chicken and potatoes is when you take chicken and potatoes and you cook them, usually with a bit of lemon, and then you put dill over all of it. And it's a very tasty, a very fresh taste of all this food. And it's very healthy for you. And finally, we have rhubarb pie. Now, rhubarb is this reddish pink stuff, and it's a sweet, it's actually the stem of a plant. What you do is you take it, and then you will cook it in water, and then let it sit in sugar for a while. And it gets really nice and sweet, and then typically you will mix it with strawberries. And it makes a very good jam, but typically we will eat it in a pie like this. And it's probably the most typical spring dessert.